There is a quiet revolution happening in the world right now, and most people have not even noticed it. Millions of people, smart, loving, emotionally whole people, are looking at the wedding aisle and simply choosing not to walk down it. Not because they are broken, not because they cannot find someone, but because something deeper inside of them is pulling them in a different direction. And if you have ever wondered why some people seem perfectly content without a ring on their finger, what you are about to hear might completely change the way you think about love, connection, and what it actually means to build a meaningful life. Because here is the thing most people get wrong. Choosing not to marry is not the absence of love. It is a different kind of psychological architecture. It is a mind that is wired to seek something that no ceremony, no contract, and no shared last name can provide. And once you understand what that something is, you will never look at the unmarried person the same way again. Let us start with the elephant in the room. Society has a script, and it goes something like this. You grow up, you go to school, you find someone special, you get married, you have kids, and then you live happily ever after. It is the blueprint that has been handed down for generations, and for a long time, most people followed it without question. But in the last few decades, something has shifted. More people than ever before are stepping outside of that script. They are not rebelling for the sake of rebellion. They are not bitter or cynical. They are doing something far more interesting. They are listening to a voice inside of them that says, there might be another way to live, and it might be the right way for me. And that is where the tension begins. Because when you choose a path that does not match the one everyone expects you to follow, there is a weight that comes with it. You feel it at family dinners when your aunt asks when you are going to settle down. You feel it at weddings when people look at you with that soft, pitying smile. You feel it late at night when the world is quiet and you wonder, just for a moment, if maybe they are right and you are wrong. That tension, that push and pull between what society expects and what your soul actually needs, is one of the most powerful psychological forces a person can experience. And the people who choose not to marry have learned, often through years of deep self-reflection, how to sit with that tension and not let it break them. So what is really going on inside the mind of someone who chooses this path? To understand that, we need to talk about something psychologists call the single-at-heart mindset. This is not a clinical term you will find in a textbook. It is more of a way of describing people for whom being on their own is not a consolation prize. It is the main event. These are people who feel most alive, most creative, most grounded when they have full ownership of their time, their space, and their emotional energy. They are not avoiding intimacy. They are just wired to find their deepest sense of peace in a different place than most people look for it. Think of it like this. Imagine two plants sitting side by side in a garden. One of them thrives when its roots are tangled up with another plant. It grows taller, stronger, more vibrant. When it has that connection, the other plant needs space. It needs room for its roots to stretch out wide and deep without competition. Neither plant is better than the other. They just need different soil conditions to bloom. And the people who choose not to marry are often that second plant. They are not wilting in isolation. They are flourishing in it. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating, because when you dig a little deeper into the psychology, you start to see patterns that connect to something called attachment theory. Attachment theory is a way of understanding how people form emotional bonds based on their early experiences with caregivers. And while it would be too simple to say that everyone who avoids marriage has a specific attachment style, there is a thread worth pulling here. Some people grow up learning that their emotional needs are best met by themselves. Maybe they had parents who were loving but emotionally unavailable. Maybe they learned early on that the safest person to rely on was the one staring back at them in the mirror. And over time, that early wiring becomes a deep preference, not a wound to be healed, but a foundation to be honored. Consider a composite profile of someone we will call Julian. Julian is 36 years old. He has a good career, a close circle of friends, and a rich inner life filled with books, music, and long morning walks. He has had relationships. Some of them were even good. But every time a relationship started heading toward that next step, Julian felt something tighten in his chest. It was not fear exactly. It was more like a quiet alarm going off, telling him that the life being offered to him, the shared mortgage, the combined calendars, the gradual merging of two separate worlds into one, was not the life that would make him whole. Julian does not hate the idea of partnership. He simply knows himself well enough to understand that his version of wholeness looks different from the one society keeps trying to sell him. What makes Julian interesting is not that he rejected marriage. It is how he arrived at that decision. He did not flip a coin or wake up one day and decide to be different. He went on a long, slow journey of self-discovery. He paid attention to how he felt after a weekend alone versus a weekend filled with social obligations. He noticed that his best ideas, his clearest thinking, and his deepest sense of calm always showed up when he had space. Not just physical space, but emotional space. The kind of space where no one is waiting for a text back, no one is asking what is for dinner, and no one needs him to be anything other than exactly who he is in that moment. For Julian, that space is not emptiness. It is fuel. It is where his creativity lives. It is where his sense of self gets recharged like a battery left in the sun. And here is something else about Julian that most people overlook. He is not emotionally unavailable. He is one of the most emotionally present people you could ever meet. When he shows up for a friend in crisis, he shows up fully. When he sits with someone who is grieving, he does not rush to fill the silence with words. He just sits. He holds space. He listens with a kind of attention that most people reserve for the person they are in love with. The difference is that Julian distributes his emotional energy across many meaningful connections instead of pouring it all into one. And for him, that distribution is not a dilution. It is an expansion. And Julian is not alone. There are millions of people walking around with this same quiet understanding. They have done the inner work. They have sat with the discomfort of going against the grain. And they have arrived at a place of clarity that most people spend their entire lives searching for. They know who they are. They know what they need. And they have the courage to honor that knowledge, even when the world tells them they are making a mistake. But let us not pretend that this path is easy, because it is not. There is a real and powerful stigma attached to choosing not to marry, and it goes deeper than awkward questions at holiday gatherings. It touches something primal. Humans are social creatures. We evolved in tribes, in communities, in pairs. The drive to bond, to mate, to build a family unit is woven into our biology. And when someone chooses to step outside of that biological programming, it can trigger a deep discomfort in the people around them. It is almost as if the unmarried person is holding up a mirror and saying, "What if everything you built your life around was optional?" And that is a terrifying question for someone who has never considered it. There is even a word for the bias against single people. Researchers call it singlism. It shows up in small ways, like being the only person at the office who is expected to work late, because you do not have a family to get home to. It shows up in bigger ways too, like being passed over for opportunities, because someone assumes you are less stable or less committed than your married co-workers. It shows up in the way our tax codes are written, in the way health insurance works, in the way the entire structure of adult life is designed around the assumption that you will eventually pair up with someone. And when you choose not to, you are not just making a personal decision. You are swimming against a current that has been flowing in the same direction for centuries. The people who choose not to marry learn to navigate this current in different ways. Some of them become vocal advocates for alternative lifestyles. Others simply live their truth quietly, letting their contentment speak for itself. But almost all of them go through a period of what you might call identity reckoning, a time when they have to separate who they truly are from who the world told them they should be. And that process, while painful, is one of the most transformative things a human being can go through. It is like peeling off a layer of paint that someone else brushed onto your walls without asking. Underneath, the original color is still there, vibrant and true. It just needed to be uncovered. This is where the internal battle gets interesting, because even the people who are most confident in their choice to remain unmarried have moments of doubt. They are human, after all. And being human means wrestling with the tension between who you are and who everyone else thinks you should be. The psychologist Abraham Maslow talked about something he called self-actualization, which is basically the idea that every person has a highest version of themselves that they are trying to become. For some people, self-actualization includes a loving marriage and a family. For others, it includes deep creative work, meaningful friendships, spiritual growth, and the freedom to follow their own compass without having to negotiate every turn with a partner. And here is what most people miss. The person who chooses not to marry is not choosing against love. They are choosing a different expression of it. They pour their love into friendships that last decades. They pour it into their work, their art, their communities. They pour it into the relationship they have with themselves, which, when you think about it, is the one relationship that will be with them from the first breath to the last. There is something deeply brave about that. There is something almost radical about saying, I'm going to invest in myself, not because I am selfish, but because I understand that the best thing I can offer the world is a version of me that is fully alive. Let us talk about solitude for a moment, because this is the part that most people misunderstand. Solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. Loneliness is the ache you feel when you want connection and cannot find it. Solitude is the peace you feel when you are alone and completely at home in your own company. The people who choose not to marry often have what you might call a solitude language. Just like some people express love through words of affirmation or physical touch, some people find their deepest sense of connection through silence, through space, through the quiet hum of a life lived on their own terms. They are not hiding from the world. They are diving beneath the surface of it, like a pearl diver going deep into still water, searching for something precious that can only be found in the silence. And what they find down there is not loneliness. It is clarity. It is the kind of knowing that only comes when the noise stops and the still, small voice inside finally has room to speak. That voice does not shout. It whispers. And you can only hear it when you are willing to be quiet long enough to listen. And that brings us to the heart of the matter. The real conflict that people who choose not to marry face is not external. It is not about what their parents think or what their co-workers say behind their backs. The real conflict is internal. And it comes down to one question. What if I'm wrong? What if I wake up at 60, 70, 80 years old and realize that I missed out on something beautiful? That fear, the fear of regret, is the sharpest blade in the drawer. It cuts deeper than judgment. It cuts deeper than loneliness, because it comes from inside, from the part of you that knows you are making an irreversible choice with incomplete information. And it is worth saying that this fear is not irrational. It is deeply human. Every major life decision carries the shadow of the road not taken. The person who moves across the world for a dream job wonders about the friendships they left behind. The person who stays in their hometown wonders about the adventures they never had. Life is a series of doors, and every time you walk through one, a dozen others close behind you. The people who choose not to marry understand this better than most. They have stared at those closed doors and made peace with the fact that choosing one path means releasing another. And they have learned that the grief of letting go is not the same as the grief of making the wrong choice. Sometimes letting go is the bravest thing you can do. And this is where the psychology gets truly powerful. Because the people who navigate this fear successfully do not do it by pretending the fear does not exist. They do it by sitting with it. They hold it in their hands like a stone pulled from a riverbed, smooth and heavy and real. They look at it from every angle, and then they set it down, not because they have all the answers, but because they have made peace with the uncertainty. They understand that every life path comes with its own set of regrets. The person who marries might regret the freedom they gave up. The person who stays single might regret the intimacy they never fully explored. No one gets to live a life completely free of what-ifs. The difference is that the people who choose not to marry have looked their what-ifs directly in the eye and decided that authenticity matters more than comfort. There is a peace that comes with that decision, a deep, settled, bone-level peace that is hard to describe unless you have felt it. It is the peace of alignment. It is the feeling of your outer life finally matching your inner truth. And for the people who choose this path, that peace is not a consolation prize. It is the whole point. It is what they have been searching for all along, even when they did not have the words for it. Now, none of this means that marriage is wrong or outdated or unnecessary. Marriage is beautiful for the people who genuinely want it. It is a profound commitment, a deep act of trust, and for many people, it is the foundation of their happiest years. But here is what we need to understand as a culture. Marriage is a choice. It is not a milestone that determines your worth as a human being. It is not a finish line that you have to cross in order to prove that you are capable of love. It is one option among many, and the people who choose a different option are not missing out on life. They are living it on their own terms, in their own way, with their own definition of what it means to be whole. And if we are being honest, that takes an enormous amount of courage. It takes courage to stand in front of a world that is constantly telling you what happiness should look like and say, I appreciate the suggestion, but I have already found mine. It takes courage to build a life that does not fit neatly into a box, a life that cannot be summarized in a wedding announcement or a family holiday card. It takes courage to trust yourself that deeply, especially when the people who love you the most are the ones who understand you the least. So the next time you meet someone who has chosen not to marry, resist the urge to fix them. Resist the urge to set them up with your friend from work or to remind them that time is running out. Instead, get curious. Ask them what lights them up. Ask them what their mornings look like. Ask them about the book they are reading or the trip they just took or the project that is keeping them up at night with excitement. Because when you do, you might discover something unexpected. You might discover a person who is not running from love, but running toward a version of it that is deeper, wider, and more honest than anything you have ever imagined. And maybe, just maybe, their story will help you understand your own a little better. Because at the end of the day, this is not really about marriage or singleness. It is about the courage to know yourself, the wisdom to honor what you find, and the strength to live accordingly, even when the world is not ready to understand. So here is a question to sit with tonight. What would your life look like if you gave yourself permission to define happiness on your own terms? Not your parents' terms, not society's terms, yours. That is a question worth asking, whether you are married, single, or somewhere in between. And if this video helped you think about it in a new way, consider subscribing to the channel. We explore the quiet corners of the human mind here, the places most people are too busy to visit, and there is always room for one more curious soul. Thanks for being here. We will see you in the next one.